Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will get started in just a couple minutes. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this meeting. We'll get started in 1 or 2 minutes. Thanks. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12:02 officially in the afternoon, so I think we will go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us today for our virtual public meeting on the Charlottesville Area Transit CAT Transit Strategic Plan. This meeting is one of 2 that has been offered to share information on the Transit Strategic Plan. Both meetings will have the same agenda and content. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, and we will post the recording online in the days following the meeting. My name is Lucas Muller with Kimley Horn. I am the principal in charge of the consultant team that is supporting Charlottesville Area Transit on the Transit Strategic Plan. We are joined today by Garland Williams, Director of CAT, and shortly Ben Chambers, Transportation Planning Manager for the City of Charlottesville. Thank you again for joining us, and let's get started. So we will start today's meeting with an overview of the Transit Strategic Plan project, what that document is, including a summary of the work that we have conducted and completed to date. We'll then shift to the bulk of the meeting, which will focus on the components, the elements of the Transit Strategic Plan document that is now available for public comment on the website and eventual City Council consideration for adoption. We'll then close by touching on next steps and end with we'll end with time to answer any questions you may have about the project process or the draft document. As you know, we are using Zoom today for our virtual meeting platform. To maximize the quality of the meeting for all participants, your video and audio is disabled by default. We ask that you use the built-in question and answer feature to ask your questions, either as they come up throughout the meeting or once we reach our question and answer session at the end of the meeting. If you would prefer to verbalize your question, please use the raise hand feature, and the project team will unmute you when it is your turn. If you are dialed in on the phone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. Captions are also available for this meeting. It can be enabled by clicking the Show Captions button on your toolbar. Project team will answer as many questions as we can during our time together today. If you have specific comments or questions about the draft document that you would like to share as part of the official public comment period, we ask that you do so online via our virtual feedback form available on CAT's website. We'll share more information about how to share your comments online again at the end of this meeting. Again, please note this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be made available online. So before we get started, we're again joined by Garland Williams, Director of CAT. I'd like to invite Garland to provide some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Lucas. Once again, Garland Williams, Director of Charlottesville Area Transit. I want to thank everyone who's participating today. This is an important step for CAT. We've been at this process now, which is a requirement for us, a little over 16 months. So we're finally coming into the final stretch. Your input and feedback is important. It helps us to provide the state with our plans and basically lay out what we think is to be the best transit system that we can provide for this area based on the feedback that we get from the region. So with that, Lucas, let's get started.
All right, thank you. So we'll start by just providing a brief overview of the project. So a transit strategic plan are required by all larger transit agencies in the Commonwealth of Virginia that are operating in urbanized areas. These plans are developed based on approved guidelines by the Commonwealth Transportation Board, and the overall process being overseen by the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, or DRPT. Once complete, the transit strategic plan will serve as a blueprint for CAT in the years ahead, with an emphasis of service, operations, and capital and equipment needs. So we'll take the transit strategic plan will take the place of CAT's 2018 transit development plan as the key future-looking planning document that will guide the service over the next 10 years. It is important to consideration that these transit strategic plans are a flexible document, being able to be updated frequently throughout the process as times change. So the CAT team has completed lots of work to date over the past year, including an initial phase of public outreach and stakeholder outreach last summer. During that phase, we conducted an online public survey and a series of pop-up events that yielded over 500 responses about the current conditions and priorities for improvements. CAT has also convened a working group of community and regional stakeholders to help guide the development of the plan to ensure it reflects the needs of our growing community and growing and diverse community. We've also collaborated with frontline CAT staff, the bus operators, and others who know the routes the best, and also understand some of the needs of the customers to further inform the development of the plan and our recommendations. So the feedback that we received to that and the rest of the community has really been paired with some technical data on demographic data, where people are going, where people are living, how the current routes are performing, to help us assess existing conditions and chart a path forward for our recommended improvements. The plan itself has a lot of information about results from the public survey. We learned a lot from the community over the course of the project in terms of what priorities for improvements are, why people choose to ride the bus today, and what destinations people are going to from the bus. The top priorities of riders in the community certainly included more frequent service, expanded areas of service, and longer hours of operation, both during the week and on the weekends. That's something we've seen in Charlottesville, but also throughout Virginia, of just people wanting and needing a desire for transit throughout the week and the weekend, not just at those traditional peak times. And so there's some of the recommendations. So those are some of the factors that have influenced the recommendations that we are proposing to include in the plan. As part of our outreach to the community, we also found it important to understand why people might not be riding the bus, to learn how we can make the system more attractive, not just for current riders, but for potential future riders as well. So again, we learned a lot tied to frequency of service and where the service goes is being important factors in attracting new riders that currently do not use the CAT service. I mentioned those guidelines that come from the Virginia DRPT. There are 5 chapters that are associated with the transit strategic planning process, really where we combine that technical as well as the engagement information to develop those recommendations. So these separate chapters are combined to make up the full draft transit strategic plan, which again is posted. This is some of what we'll be walking through on our call, on our meeting here today, focusing a lot in on that chapter 3, the planned improvements and modifications. With that, I'll now walk us through more about what you can expect within the document itself. So we mentioned that strategic blueprint outlining the next 10 years. It's also important to highlight that the TSP document is a legislative mandate in order to obtain future state funding. So CAT, among other sources, relies significantly on state funding for both the operations as well as the capital. So the operating the service as well as the buses themselves. And so really, the state and DRPT is looking for a way to provide a forecast of what those funding requests might be in the future years to help understand what the needs throughout the Commonwealth may be. But certainly these recommendations right now are not binding. The plan is certainly meant to be flexible and can be adjusted in future updates. So every year, CAT has an opportunity to submit a written update to DRPT about what may have changed, as well as doing a more full refresh of the document every 5 years. And especially for CAT, given all of the ongoing efforts of regional coordination, the recent launch of MicroCat, the growth in the region, bus operator challenges, all of these elements really contribute to a need for flexibility. So collectively, we've documented the best that we can right now of the information that we have available, and we'll certainly be actively monitoring those and looking for potential updates. So these are those 5 chapters again, and I'm going to start by going through chapter 3, which has the majority of the recommendations in that document. So to summarize some of the planned improvements, over the course of the 10-year plan, there were 40 service improvements developed. So a service improvement can mean changing where the bus route goes, the roads that it goes on, when it operates, where it stops. So 40 different changes that are incorporated that. And in Charlottesville, really we're able to build from a base of some previous planning efforts, starting with the 2021 system optimization plan, and then moving forward towards the regional transit vision plan. So those 2 documents, those created some of the foundations. We also looked at if there were some gaps or anything that had changed since the publication of those documents to develop the recommendations that ultimately end up in the TSP. You'll see as we go through the TSP, the recommendations are included in 3 different timeframes: the short, mid, and long term. Recommendations, according to the guidelines, are required to be fiscally constrained. Basically, that means that we anticipate that there will be funding available to pay for those services at the time of the launch. So certainly, that's one of the elements too that we will be monitoring and looking forward. Recommendations cover fiscal year 2025 to fiscal year 2034. The fiscal year calendar is a little bit different than the regular calendar year. So fiscal year 25 actually starts July 1st of this year in 2024. The document also includes some additional unconstrained projects. So items that are not fully ready to be specific projects yet, but may require some additional study. But it was important to document those efforts. So first, we'll touch on some of the planned improvements in the short term. So this could be anywhere from those first 4 years, again, beginning as soon as July 1st of this year. Really, in this time period, looking to update the route alignments and really improving weekday frequency. So it's an important goal of CAT to try to get all of the service ultimately towards the 30-minute minimum of service. There are certainly other routes that will be operating more frequently, but getting towards that 30-minute baseline is a key priority. So looking at areas to advance those weekday frequencies in the short term. Many of you may be familiar also with the recent launch of MicroCat, the on-demand microtransit pilot that is serving in 2 areas. So certainly we expect that to continue and to look at that and analyze the data and look at potential for future changes or expansion. This is during this 4-year period, most of the recommendations that were originally included in the CAT system optimization plan are included to be identified in these 4 years. And through these 4 years, we're adding about 30% more service. So that's sometimes measured in what we call service hours. Basically, that means just the amount of bus service that's provided will increase by about 30% by the end of this 4-year period. The example on the screen here is one of many of the more individual route recommendations. So the Route 2 currently operates on a one-way loop, which can be confusing or inconvenient to riders if they're trying to go in one of the other directions. So this recommendation splits the Route 2 into 2 patterns, which provides some new connections to Monticello High School, as well as the Piedmont Community College. Moving now to the midterm, so the 4 to 8 year time frame. Again, similar focuses here of some route realignments to update to where some of the dense areas and the areas of transit need are. Looking to improve frequencies more on both during the weekday as well on the weekend, and looking to reintroduce Sunday service during this time. Again, one of the things we heard was just the need for more service on the weekends. So by this 8-year time frame, we'll be adding approximately 70% more service compared to today. And this will complete the recommendations that were identified originally in that system optimization plan and begin implementing some of the regional transit vision plan recommendations as well. In the longer term, we will be looking to improve weekday frequency on all routes to have every 30 minutes or better. Again, more increased frequencies better frequencies on the weekends, and matching Sunday and Saturday service as well. So this would add over to basically doubling the service the amount of service that is there provided today. The example on the screen here was the Route 8, which is proposed to be increased to the 30-minute service, as well as providing a one-seat ride to the Willoughby Shopping Center without having to transfer. So I hit on some of the specific examples. All of those route recommendations are included in the plan, and would encourage you all to look at that and provide any questions or comments that you may have. I mentioned some of that there were some unconstrained improvements pending for future study. So further, beyond what we can reasonably assume to be funded, again, looking at more service on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, some additional route realignments and extension, as well as potential expansion of the MicroCat service. Those are kind of the service-related items. There also are some what we call non-service recommendations. So these could be studies, coordination, technology, or other policy considerations. Looking at ways to improve and make more convenient the customer experience. Looking at coming to a determination about fare policy, if when there could be a reintroduction of fares for CAT service. Looking at certainly ways to continue coordinating with the region about looking at connections throughout the different counties and jurisdictions, as well as the universities. I mentioned the microtransit expansion potential as well, and continuing to look at those technical items such as on-time performance and other route data that we get, and looking to make more adjustments to the service. So that summarizes kind of what is in Chapter 3, the planned service and improvements. Chapter 4 deals with the infrastructure and implementation considerations. So this is what we sometimes call the capital side as opposed to the operating. So over that 10-year horizon, with the recommendations that are adding new service, as well as the required replacement timeframes for the vehicles, there will be about 72 new buses that are anticipated that will need to be purchased. The sustainability is certainly a critical component here, and CAT has committed that any replacement or expansion vehicles purchased in 2027 and beyond will be exclusively zero emission vehicles. And then going to, in terms of some of the upcoming projects that are happening currently and in this next fiscal year, some installations of bus shelters, as well as some preliminary work for the ultimate engineering for CAT's operations facility. There are physical modifications and improvements that are needed to be done to the facilities to make them able to accommodate future zero emission vehicles. So, and then Chapter 5 focuses on the financial considerations. Again, these requirements, the recommendations are required to be financially constrained, but those funding sources and the cost estimates can certainly be updated in future years. These recommendations strive to maximize the use of external funding sources, but certainly there is a local funding need and contingent of that to match any of those external sources. We all would really like to see increased frequency for as much of the service as possible. That it is important to understand that that does require significant increases in both operations and capital funding. So there are those recommendations included in the plan. We will hope to advance those as much as we can with the funding that is available. But again, completion and submission of this plan is required to receive the future state funding. So we certainly want to prepare for that. There are some existing funding sources too that are slated to ramp down and eventually run out. So there may be an increase in the need of local funding support going beyond 2026, as some of the state funding for fare-free service, as well as some of the federal COVID Recovery Act funding will no longer be available after 2025. But overall, the recommendations that are slated in the plan, the CAT and the team is confident that these will help to improve the CAT service overall and help better serve the region by transit. So we're excited about that. Excited to look towards finalizing this plan. We are in May right now. The public comment period is open. And so we've had some briefings with some of the stakeholder groups as well as the Regional Transit Partnership, and anticipate taking this to the City Council for adoption on June 3rd, and then submission to DRPT in advance of the June 30th deadline. And so, and this is just another heads up. We're just one or two more slides here. But if you do have questions, feel free to note those in the question form in the chat, and we will answer those shortly. But the official draft document is available on the website for official public comment. Those comments will be accepted through the end of the day on May 31st. There's an online feedback form, as well as additional information on that website. Today is the second of two, as I mentioned, virtual public meetings. These will be recorded and posted on the website. And again, looking to strive for council adoption at that June 3rd meeting. So again, thank you for your time this afternoon. And we are happy to do our best to answer any questions that you all may have for this effort. I do see, so the first question that we have, will there be a request for lighting and shelter on all bus stops? That's certainly something that I would recommend, if that's something that is important to you, to include that in a public comment for consideration. There are places for those types of capital improvements to be included in the transit strategic plan document. The next question says, with regard to the replacement vehicles purchased in 2027 or beyond being exclusively ZEBs, is this FY27 beginning July 1st, 2026 or calendar year 2027? Garland, do you want to take that one?
It's calendar. It's calendar.
Calendar year 2027. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, again, related to the seating for bus stops, that would be a similar request for, encourage you to put that as a public comment. The question is, what is the process for incorporating public feedback into the plan? So we'll be reviewing any of the comments that we receive through the end of the comment period. We'll be sharing what we hear. At that council meeting, and if there are any modifications that need to be made to the document itself, we can either consider if the document needs to be adjusted or if they can be noted in future potential updates. Those look to be the questions that have been submitted in the chat. If anyone has, looking to see if anyone has raised their hand or would like to take a question verbally, or is there anything else that people are curious about?
Lucas, I would say that I know we've got a couple of questions about amenities, lighting, and shelters. CAT already has some money that we've already put aside for amenity improvements. That's about $300,000. So we've started that process, and the process is actually a little different than what we've done in the past. And Ben Chambers is actually on the call. I'm gonna ask Ben if he will kind of give us an update, because we are working with the state on that project itself. There is actually a site plan that has to be done for every bus stop that we do now in the scope. So Ben, will you just field that question for me?
Yeah, happy to do that. So as Garland said, we do have some budget to put towards making bus stop improvements. Some of that money is going to improvements at bus stops in the city, which would go through a process of getting reviewed by city engineering, and we're working through that with about a dozen bus stop locations. The first one that you will see under construction will be moving the bus stop at Belmont Park. We are signing off on the final comments from our engineers right now on that, and we'll be moving forward with the RPT and their contractor carrying out that work for us. On the county side of things, we're also working with DRPT, but the permitting process is a little bit different, and the permitting process goes through VDOT. DRPT has stepped in and is helping us work with VDOT to get those permits resolved, and is working with county staff to, locate the correct bus stop locations that will get these amenities improvements going forward. That money is going to be spent over the next year of trying to get these shelters into places both on the city and the county side. And right now it's sort of a slow process. We've just started working through How does this permitting process work, both in the city and on the county side? I think once we get a couple of them in the ground, you'll see progress pick up pace on that. But right now, we're sort of at the beginning of that process.
Thanks, Ben and Garland. There was a question of, can we share our suggestions here or just ask questions? Yeah, certainly feel free to, if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you, and would love to hear your reactions or suggestions here. And while you're doing that, there was a question also, the TSP mentioned the low number of responses from the survey meant that there were not a representative sample and there was not a weighting assigned to those samples. Was there a plan in place to give weight to those responses? So in order to really have a sense of how to numerically and statistically weight responses, that's something that usually has to be done ahead of time to have a really statistically valid sampling and impact the distribution of those. So while we certainly did make efforts to reach out to different sources and riders and non-riders, that level of statistical analysis was not included as part of this, but we certainly will be looking, we will be and have been looking, in terms of looking at different the different ways that different feedback came from different groups or different areas throughout the survey. That looks like and Caetano.
Yes, hi. My name is Caetano de Campos Lopez. I'm with the Community Climate Collaborative. I wanted to share a few thoughts. First, I want to commend Kat and the City of Charlottesville, Ben Chambers, to put together this plan. It's awesome that you are addressing many topics, and I will focus on things that I think that should be improved, but that doesn't mean that you have awesome material put together. So thanks so much for everything that you put together first. I just want to share a few thoughts on a few things that I think is important. One of the questions in the survey that certainly informed this plan about what's preventing people that are not riding CAT today to use it talks about the bus takes too long and frequency is not big enough or is not frequent enough. And it's coupled in the same question. And I just want to express that from my engagement with community members, these two questions, which were coupled in just one, are actually two factors. And the frequency is very important, but I know lots of community members that complain about the loops being very long. So even if the bus are going to be more frequent, if the person needs to be 1 hour in a loop to get anywhere in Charlottesville, usually walking, if the person can walk, it's going to be faster. So I strongly recommend to frequency to also be considered very closely with the length of the loops, especially for those loops that are circular and not bidirectional. I also wanted to share another feedback that I received, which has to do with cultural and language skills of the drivers. Lots of people that I know, and Charlottesville, it's getting to be more and more of a cosmopolitan community in Orange County, with refugees, immigrants, and etc. And lots of people that I know don't ride a bus because they don't know how to, when in doubt, interact with the driver, for example, to ask, hey, can I just double check if you're going to this place or this other? And perhaps making sure that the drivers understand the importance of engaging with people that don't speak English as well as a regular American. Things like that from the cultural and language perspective, I think it's so important. I also received concerns from community members about carrying grocery bags in the bus, sometimes being prohibited. And that talks about some people that really need to do that. So I think it's really important. Things that are minor, quote unquote, it's not minor, but minor in terms of infrastructure or investment. It's not a major investment to just be more aware of those factors. And the last thing that I wanted to share is about a couple of things about an app that integrates UTS, CAT, and JALT. Even if you're working separately, lots of people would love to have the ability to know about their options, everything together in the same app. MicroCat has their own app. CAT has another app. Jump, it's working in different systems in ETS too. So just make it easier for the rider. And lastly, just that GRTC, our neighbors in Richmond, have expressed that the main reason of their success in recent years, there's a statement that says that it was the drivers, making sure that they had sufficient drivers and good retention of drivers is the one thing that they said it's the first and top reason of their success. So I just want to make sure that making sure that CAT has adequate staffing for drivers. It's so important, and I just want to make sure I said that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for all of those comments related to frequency and the loops, the cultural language components with the drivers, integrated apps, and certainly driver operator retention. Those are all really important elements, and certainly taking notes of those now. I would also encourage you to submit those as official comments through the website as well. But appreciate that feedback.
Lucas, there's two other comments in the I guess Kendall's comment is the first of the last two that are there.
Yes, thank you, Garland. Okay, so related to the zero emission buses, a question of what will we be doing, buying nothing but conventional buses in the interim. There were some newer buses that newer Gillig buses that seem very loud.
So let me field that question. So no, we won't be just buying conventional buses until 2027. We are working right now to finalize our last demo with another there's only two BEB providers that are on state contract that we can buy from. One is Gillig and one is New Flyer. We've had a Gillig demo. We're working to arrange a demo of the New Flyer battery electric product, the 35 footers that we purchased. Once that is done, my team and I, with our consultants, will sit down and make a decision on which vehicles fit the criteria we've built up about range and technology available, reporting, sorts of things that we'll need to answer and all the state questions that we get, and making sure that we can monitor the system properly. But we're going to be buying two battery electric vehicles in this coming fiscal year, and in 26 two more. So we'll be buying 4 as a part of our first pilot. In 27, there's a pilot we're doing with hydrogen fuel cell technology. We'll be buying 3 in FY27. So we'll be buying conventional vehicles during that time period also. So we're not just buying conventional. We are starting to mix in as a part of our pilots to test, and then we will, once we figure out which works best for our model, we're going to go pretty aggressive to making sure that we fulfill our commitment to City Council that we transition as fast as we can and get to zero emission by 20. We've committed to do it by 2040 as opposed to 2050, so 10 years earlier. So I hope that answers your question. On the Gillig noise issue, we'll have to look and see if there are. It could be the struts themselves just need adjustment. So I'll ask the team to take a look at that. It could be a couple of other things where we'll look at the windows and maybe the seals weren't as put together as the other ones, because that actually causes some of the noise issues. But there are a few things that we can check and see if we can tamp down the noise on the inside. But most buses that have a conventional engine do have noise. Maybe these are a little louder, but we'll do everything we can to mitigate that.
Thanks, Colin. And I think that the next one was just mainly a comment of just making sure that bus drive operators are, you know, being monitored closely to make sure that they're, you know, sticking to the schedules and not waiting outside buses. So we'll note that. Appreciate that comment. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments or reactions to what was shared or in the document? All right, well, we appreciate all of your time this afternoon, either during your lunch or whatever you happen to be doing this afternoon. Thanks for your time. We'll stick on for a few more minutes if there are any other remaining questions. But again, appreciate your time and thank you for showing interest in the CAT system and coming out to our meeting today.
Yeah, I would second that. I would say thank you on behalf of CAT, because this is a very important project for us. Your feedback is valued and very necessary in making sure we provide the best model for this region. If you have not had an opportunity, please take the opportunity and time to go out and fill out the questionnaire, take a look at the actual document, give us your feedback. We really do want it. And we will move forward with consensus from the region. Thank you.